Weren't we just in January like 3 weeks ago? I really don't like how time is flying so far, because how the fuck are we already halfway through the year? Hey guys, how is everybody doing? The month of July 2024 is now officially behind us, and we are on August somehow. We are somehow already halfway through the fucking year, and I have to go back to school in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I really don't like how time is flying. It's scary, but yeah, I managed to check out 5 new releases during the month of July. Now, if you are just now joining me, hello, welcome to my channel. By the way, this is a monthly ranking that I decided to do this year, and hopefully do out through the rest of my YouTube hobby. Is I like to take all of the movies that I watched during that month, new releases, and rank them all from worst to best. Now, I did not do it for January, so I have a playlist, and if you don't see January, because I only managed to see 2 movies during that month, and that was Night Swim and The Beekeeper. So, I only managed to see 5 movies this month because my theater kind of sucks, and it wasn't showing Longlegs or Kill or whatever other big blockbuster movies were coming out during this month. And I also was just pretty busy, just time gets ahead of me and all that. But yeah, I managed to still check out 5 movies, and I feel that's still good for a list. If you ask me, I still think that's a still a good amount of movies for a ranking, especially for like a month. Because seeing like 5 movies throughout the month is still just mind blowing to me. But yeah, so today I'm going to be ranking all 5 new release movies that I checked out during the month of July of 2024. Bringing in my number 5, which I'm not surprised is my number 5, and I kind of figured it was going to be my number 5 the second I seen it. Like, I knew no matter what when I did this list, this was going to be at the bottom of my list, and that is Despicable Me 4. Now, I did grow up with the Despicable Me series. I grew up with especially the second one. That one was my favorite growing up, but rewatching it, real leading up to this one, I was like, it's not so much for me no more. But my favorite now is still the first one. It is now the first one. But yeah, I grew up with Despicable Me. It is possibly the biggest animated series out there right now after Toy Story kind of lost its momentum. But, Despicable Me, over time as I grow up, I don't really like it no more. When I was younger, that was the shit for me. That was the biggest thing in the world for me at that point. But, as I said, as time goes along, Despicable Me just doesn't really go for me. And this one is more centered about the kids. But what I do like about the Despicable Me series, and something that was very consistent every time they released a new movie, was that they kind of developed Gru more, because in the first one he was like this very horrible person. He was a villain, but as he adopted those little girls, he started to change and started to become a better person, became a better father, because those little girls kind of changed his life, and they kind of made him view everything else new. And you got Despicable Me 2, where he finally meets the love of his life, and he kind of figures out is that he has a wife now, and he has a whole new family. And then the third movie, he kind of grows to have his brother, and he kind of teaches himself to be the bigger brother. But in this one, Gru doesn't change so much. If anything, he kind of grows to be the better father for his son, but that's barely in the movie. But like the characters, they didn't really seem like they got to do much. The whole Mega Minion thing was very much a ripoff of the Fantastic Four, because their powers were very much like Fantastic Four or X-Men-ish powers. Which I get the joke, but it's just like that just feels too on the nose with me. But and I really don't like how they wasted Will Ferrell, because his fucking villain of all people, a human cockroach. Really, I get it. It's a kids movie. It's meant for kids, not really meant for young adults or adults. I get that. But Despicable Me, I feel that it's kind of slowly overcoming its welcome, because we have a third Minions movie coming out in the next like 2 years, I think, or 3 years, because it's coming out in 2027. Which, how long does it take to make a fucking Minions movie? Coming in at my number 4, that was one of my biggest surprises of the year, and that is Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Now, I really love that first Beverly Hills Cop. I checked out those 3 movies for the first time with this releasing on Netflix. And I really loved that first movie. I really enjoyed the second one. Although it has its flaws, I do find myself enjoying the third one. I don't understand all the hate that movie gets. It's still a fucking fun time. But slowly as I watched those movies and as I was getting to this one, I was like, oh god. Because I started to think about it more. Eddie Murphy doing a sequel to one of his most beloved characters in one of his most beloved movies of all time. coming back but going straight to streaming, huge red flag, because the last time he did that was Coming to America on Amazon Prime, and I hated that movie. That was one of the worst movies the year it came out. What year did that come out? Like 2020, I think? I think that movie came out in 2020, and that was one of the worst movies of that year, which was very few. But I went in with very low expectations. I didn't hear any early reviews for some reason. I didn't see any on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter. And I was surprised, surprised how much I enjoyed this movie and how much of a damn good time I had with it. And I'm surprised that it didn't end up becoming the worst of the series, and to where I really had a good time. Eddie Murphy, I was so glad to see him come back as like old school Eddie Murphy, to where he has that charm again, he has that charisma again. It's just so good to see old school Eddie Murphy once again. And just the action, not mind blowing action of all time, but out of the series, it's by far the best in my mind, which it was just surprising me, especially the budget this movie had, which was like 100 million, which isn't surprising anymore for movies, but for Beverly Hills Cop, really that big of a budget. But the action was great. Seeing the guy who played Robin and was the one character in Inception, and who basically played Robin in Dark Knight Rises. Him as like a secondary character in this movie. He was a lot of fun. I loved his dynamic with Axel in this movie. But the few things that I was really bummed out about was Eddie Murphy's daughter, or Axel's daughter in this movie. I forget her name, but she was really for me. I didn't really hate her. I thought she was okay throughout the movie, but throughout the entire fucking movie, it's just her complaining, her basically telling Axel throughout the entire movie that he was a horrible father. But it's just like, I get it, character arc, character development, but it's just like, that simply could have been like one section in this movie, and then that could have been resolved, but they just played out throughout the entire fucking movie. And Kevin Bacon being revealed as the villain, I saw coming the second he was on screen. And unfortunately, I was a bit bummed that we didn't get to see the original trio in this one, because, coming back to Beverly Hills, you're like, ooh, we might see the original trio. But Billy, he gets kidnapped in the very beginning of the movie, and the sergeant and the sergeant now, he's just being the captain now. And he doesn't have much to do. Doesn't really have any on-screen dynamics with Axel. But however, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, it was a damn good time. I really enjoyed myself, and if you are a Beverly Hills Cop fan, I do think that this is actually worth checking out. Coming in at my number three, which is surprising it's at my number three, because I honestly thought this would be at the bottom of my list, which is yet another one of my most surprising movies of the year, and that is going to be Glenn Powell's new movie, Twisters. Now, at the time before I seen this movie, I had not seen the original Twister. Now, I didn't really have the intentions to, but I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Twister was on Max. I checked it out, and I was like, you know what? That original movie is pretty good. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the first movie. That is a really good movie. And Bill Paxton, rest in peace. And my stepdad wanted to go to our local drive-in to watch this movie with me, and I was like, sure, why not? He loves that original movie. That's one of his favorite movies of all time. And I was like, you know what? Just let's do it for the hell of it. We watched at the drive-in, and I was actually surprised how much of a damn good time this movie was. And I don't know how controversial this is or how much of a hot take this is. I actually prefer Twisters over the original Twister. I don't know how much of a controversy that will be or how much of a hot take that is. But that's just how I felt, because the entire time I was watching, I was like, this movie is actually a lot of fun. This movie's actually a lot of fun to watch. I'm really enjoying this movie. And Glenn Powell, that guy, he is just skyrocketing at this point. He was in one of my favorite movies of the year with Hitman. That was one of my favorite movies of the year so far. And now with this, and apparently he's going to be in another movie with Jenna Ortega announced. He's doing another movie with Sydney Sweeney. He's supposedly going to be part of Top Gun 3, which how I found out about Glenn Powell. That guy, he has a hell of a career ahead of him, and I'm so excited for the future of him. And this movie is just a lot of fun. The effects with the tornadoes, looked brilliant. I thought they looked really well. They looked really cool, and I really like the whole blend of like practical and CGI, because I saw like that when this movie was advertised, they would show like ads of like on set scenes of like them using like practical work for like wind and buildings and things flying through the air because of the tornado, and then the only CGI they would supposedly use was only to use to make the tornadoes, which obviously look better than the original because but the original did come out during the 90s and VFX and CGI isn't as good as it is today. But I just really just had a really good time. The only negative that I can really think of is the whole chemistry between Glenn Powell and the main girl of this. They had no chemistry whatsoever, and at the very end, where they didn't even kiss, they didn't seem to like really become a couple. They kind of become a couple at like the final 1 minute of the movie, like quite literally. The ending of this movie is with the girl going to the airport, and then uh all the planes getting delayed because of tornado, and then Glenn Powell and her just go and chase it at the end. And that's it. That's the only romantic thing that we get at the end. It's just like, well, they didn't have any chemistry, so it didn't bother me. But it's just like, well, that's kind of unfortunate that we didn't even get to see that, motherfuckers. But yeah, and if we do end up getting a third Twister, which we might end up doing because this movie overperformed at the box office, because this movie has already made $250 million already. Which, if we do get a third movie, I'm fine with that. I would love to see these characters again. I'd be glad to see Glenn Powell chase tornadoes again. This movie was just a damn good time, and if you haven't checked it out yet, I actually strongly recommend it because it was a damn fun time. And if you like the original Twister, I definitely see you enjoying this one. And now we have reached my top two, and it's not because they're close calls why I'm kind of delaying this, but what's funny is that my top two of July were actually my top two most anticipated movies of the entire year. It's funny how this came full circle because my number two is going to be the conclusion to the X trilogy of Ty West's Maxine. Now, I fucking love this X trilogy. This X trilogy was just a gift from God for us horror fans because I remember to this day I had no idea what X is. I just saw A24 over the poster, and it came out during a time to where no new movies were coming out that really had my interest, and so I saw this movie playing. I was like, you know what? What the hell? Let's go check out X, and I fucking fell in love with it. That became my favorite horror movie that year at the time before The Black Phone came out, and I was like, dude, X was awesome. That was a really good time. And then I found out that a prequel had already been shot, and that it was coming out the same year, and I was like, what the fuck? We're getting another one? And I found out it was a prequel to the killer of the first movie, Pearl. And I was like, what? Already? We're getting a follow up? Let's fucking go, dude. And I absolutely love Pearl. That is my favorite of this entire X trilogy. And I was so excited when I heard that there was a third movie announced, but what's weird is that technically I did not watch this movie in July. I kind of cheated a little bit because I did not watch this movie until the other day, until it came out on streaming, to where I had to pay $15 just to rent it on Prime. And so yeah, technically I did not watch this on in July, but because my theater was a dickbag and was not playing it for some reason when it played X and Pearl, but for some reason they decided not to play it here. Don't know why, but I cheated a little bit. But hey, it's my channel, my rules, my list. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So Maxine is my number two of the year, and I was a bit nervous going into this movie because of some reviews. I heard some people say they didn't like it, they didn't get into it, and it is the weakest of the X trilogy. And I was like, oh no, God, please be good. And I was so excited, but yet so nervous. And I am so glad that I loved Maxine to where it is now my second favorite of the X trilogy. And so my ranking, if I were to do a separate video, it would go X, Maxine, and then Pearl. My favorite of the trilogy is Pearl. I fucking love that movie. To this day, I still think that Mia Goth got robbed at the Oscars for her performance in that. I will die on that hill to this day. But yeah, Maxine was just a damn good time, and it was just everything I could have hoped for a conclusion and for an uh 80s setting for the X trilogy. Mia Goth just proves to me that she's just one of the best actresses in horror right now. Controversy aside, she's still great in this movie. I really like the whole Night Stalker whole thing, and it's like a payback to Giallo horror, like just wearing black gloves and a knife or a razor, stuff like that. That has always been something that I've loved in the horror genre, so I really love the tribute to that. And the one thing that kept it from being my number one was the final act on who the reveal was at the Night Stalker. I will not reveal it. I will not spoil it for some of you who have not seen it, but this movie has been out for a month, but I still won't spoil it. But the reveal, I just thought was plain for the obvious. Every clue this killer sent off to were like this devil or demon like cemented prints on their foreheads. It's like a star with the circle on it. We've all seen devil signs, and how like people and this killer is targeting people around Maxine, trying to get under her skin. I was just like, I have a huge feeling who this is, especially the way this movie begins. The first thing they show in this movie, I was like, oh, I see. But yeah, that was really disappointing on the reveal, and that whole final act that kind of brought down the movie for me. And if this is the final X movie of this trilogy and of this entire series, I'm completely fine with that. I am actually satisfied. This is one of the best horror trilogies we have gotten in a very long time. I am very happy with this conclusion. But as Maxine says at the end of this movie, I never want it to end. And of course, coming into my number one is Deadpool and Wolverine, my most anticipated movie of the year, and I knew undoubtedly this would end up being my number one of the year, of this month. And I am a huge Deadpool fan. I grew up with that original movie, and I am a huge Wolverine fan. I also grew up with those X-Men movies when I was younger. And when they announced that Hugh Jackman was coming back as Wolverine back in 2022, I was like, really? But excuse me, are you gonna fuck up the ending of Logan? Logan was just such a beautiful send off. Like, I just don't like this idea. But as time came, my little bitch whore inside of me that's a huge fan of Hugh Jackman, I was like, you know what? I'm excited. Let's see what he can do. I'm just a giggly little bitch when it came to that. And God, I fucking loved Deadpool and Wolverine. It's not my favorite Deadpool movie. I'm sorry. My favorite Deadpool movie is still the first movie. Yell at me all you want. My favorite Deadpool movie is still the first one. I'll die on that hill. But this movie was just fucking amazing. It was just everything I was hoping for. And the cameos that we got, I won't spoil it for people who have not seen it. There's one cameo in this movie that just had me just almost, it almost made me stand up out of my seat, just yell, fuck yeah! Like, I seriously almost did that. The second that character walked into the movie, I almost just jumped out of my seat and just yelled, fuck yeah! But I didn't want to be rude. I was like, yes, finally! But Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds' chemistry, off the charts, action. Oh, we need to get Sean Levy back for an MCU movie because it was fucking awesome. And seeing Wolverine with that mask on, dream come true. Absolutely worth the wait. And just, it was just a damn good time. And it honestly has me have more faith for the future of the MCU and for Marvel alone because I've been saying for a while that Marvel hasn't been the same ever since Endgame. And after the recent announcements, recent goodbyes in Marvel, and who's finally taking control, Kevin Feige is finally taking control of Marvel. We're finally taking time with our projects, and now that we got the release of this, it makes me honestly happy for the MCU and honestly very excited for the future to where I wasn't excited for Captain America Brave New World, but after this movie and after that recent teaser, I'm actually excited for it now. And I'm just very excited for the future of the MCU and to where this movie actually got me back on the Marvel hype train to where I've been actually rewatching Marvel movies recently. I watched The Winter Soldier, Infinity War, Endgame, I watched the Iron Man. I watched fucking the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy again. Like, I've just been on a huge Marvel kick because of this movie. But yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine, it was everything I was hoping it would be and more, and it exceeded my expectations, and it was just so fucking awesome. Thank you so much for watching my ranking of all five movies that I checked out during the month of July. What movies did you watch during the month of July? Please leave them in the comments below and we shall talk about it. If you want to rank all the movies that you checked out, please leave them in the comments below and we shall talk about it. And if you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe and hit bell notifications so you will get notified for all my latest videos and my upcoming Alien review series leading up to Alien Romulus. More on that when I talk about Alien in the next few days here. Thank you all so much for watching as always, and of course, until my next video, I will see you all next time.